The villagers used to whisper about him long before they ever saw him. They whispered about the smell, about the dirt that clung to his robes like a second skin, about the tangled hair that fell over his shoulders like a mane. They whispered that he had wandered for years without ever lowering himself into a stream or lifting a hand to scrub away the dust of the road. Yet they also whispered something stranger. Despite his filth, despite his unwashed skin and wild eyes, people followed him. Some followed for days, some for months, and some never returned at all. It began in autumn, when the days grew short and the wind carried the smell of smoke from distant fields. The people of Ashford were busy stacking wood for winter when a child cried out from the edge of the village. The monk had come. He walked slowly, as though each step carried centuries behind it. His feet were bare, cracked, and stained with the earth. His robes, once white, were brown and stiff from years of travel. His beard hung to his chest, and his hands trembled as he carried nothing but a wooden staff. The villagers watched him gather in the square. His smell reached them before his words did, sharp and earthy, like damp soil left too long in shadow. Mothers pulled their children close. Men crossed their arms. Yet when the monk lifted his face and began to speak, silence fell. His voice was not loud, but it carried. It was cracked, weary, and strangely warm, the way a fire sounds when it burns low but steady. He spoke of simple things, the turning of the seasons, the hunger that gnawed at every table, the fear that clung to every bed. He spoke not as a priest delivering commands from above, but as a man who had walked through suffering and returned alive. The people of Ashford were tired. Their harvests had been thin, their children restless, their nights long with worry. The monk said nothing new, yet in his voice was a mirror that showed them their own lives, their own struggles, and the hope that perhaps they were not alone. Still, there was unease. Why, they asked themselves, should anyone trust a man who lived in dirt? Why should anyone open their hearts to one who did not even cleanse his skin? Yet one by one, they did. Sarah, the baker's daughter, found herself waiting by the square each evening to hear his words. Thomas, a farmer with calloused hands, carried water to him though the monk never drank it all. Even old Margaret, who had not left her cottage in months, shuffled out into the chill to listen, her eyes glistening. The monk never promised wealth, never promised healing. He simply spoke, and they listened. And when he moved on, some followed. Sarah left behind her father's bakery. Thomas left his plough standing in the field. Margaret left her door swinging open to the wind. It was not beauty that drew them. His face was rough, his body lean, his scent overpowering. It was not charm, for his laugh was rare and his words plain. What drew them was harder to name. At night, by the fire, those who had followed him spoke of the way his eyes held them. They were eyes that had seen sorrow without turning away. Eyes that did not judge the dirt under their nails or the cracks in their hearts. Eyes that, for a moment, made them feel known. The villagers who stayed behind could not understand. To them, it looked like madness. To them, it looked like some dark spell, a kind of possession. But to those who followed, it felt like release. The monk led them not to temples, not to cities, but through forests and over hills. His pace was slow, his staff tapping against stones. At dawn he would sit among them, speaking softly of the dreams that lingered after sleep. At dusk he would remind them of the stars, scattered like seeds across the heavens. Sometimes he said nothing at all. Yet in the silence, people found themselves speaking, confessing griefs long hidden, fears never voiced, small joys too fragile to share at home. The monk would nod, sometimes smile, sometimes only close his eyes. And in that simple act, the burden they carried grew lighter. Days stretched into weeks. Their clothes grew ragged, their feet sore. Yet still they walked. But whispers followed. Not all believed his presence was a gift. Some called him a fraud who fed on lonely hearts. Others said he was cursed, that his refusal to bathe was proof of some pact with the unclean. A few believed he carried sickness, that his touch spread not comfort but decay. Even among his followers, doubts arose. Sarah once asked, quietly, why he never bathed. The monk looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were steady, his smile faint. The body remembers the earth, he said. Water washes it away. But I wish to remember. No more explanation was given, yet those words lingered, echoing in her thoughts. Winter came. Snow blanketed the hills, and the monk grew weaker. His steps slowed, his breath grew heavy, yet still he refused comfort. One night, by a frozen river, his followers gathered close. The fire crackled, throwing shadows on their faces. Why do we stay? Thomas asked, his voice breaking. Why do we follow a man who will not even cleanse himself? Are we mad? Are we lost? Silence fell. The monk raised his head. You follow, he said, not because I am clean, not because I am holy, but because I am as broken as you. I wear my dirt so you may see your own, and know you are not alone in it. His words hung in the air, heavy and tender. Some wept. Some bowed their heads. The monk did not live long after that winter. When spring thawed the rivers, he was gone, buried beneath the soil he had carried on his skin. Yet the memory of him lingered. Sarah returned to her village with a quiet strength in her eyes. Thomas went back to his fields, but he plowed with a softer heart. Margaret never shut her door again, welcoming neighbors with warmth. The monk's followers did not speak of miracles. They spoke only of presence, of a man who carried his own dirt so that others might accept theirs. And though the world forgot his name, the people who had known him never forgot the feeling. That even in the heaviest silence, they were not alone.